Question. Hello, Kim. I once read an article on your website from Ascended Master Mother Mary and Saint Germain about stock trading, investing in property, that these activities result in bad karma for us. They said, for those who are serious about pursuing the spiritual path, should avoid this work. I'm wondering which part that is making bad karma. In trading stocks, is it because one party wins and one loses? If we don't force other people to press the sell button when they suffer losses, so I believe it's based on people's free will. Investing in property, such as buy old, broken houses, we renovate them and then we sell them at a higher price. Is this making bad karma? Please explain in more detail how this job can cause us bad karma. Well, that's an understandable question, but if you carefully read what the Masters have said about this, you need to look at it in a broader context. You need to look at, first of all, the Ascended Masters have explained that there is a power elite that is always attempting to attain power, control over people, and privileges for themselves. So you can see non-democratic societies. There is a physical, clearly seen power elite. The feudal societies of medieval Europe, dictatorships in today's world, Putin and his oligarchs, Kim Jong-un in North Korea, and so forth. So there's a clearly visible power elite that's controlling people. In the democratic nations, we don't have such a clearly visible power elite. We have a hidden power elite that is the financiers, the billionaires, the economic elite who are trying to control society through money and the financial instruments. And what the Masters are explaining, that this power elite has created a number of these financial instruments that really only have the power of funneling money upwards. And what the Masters have explained is that this has created an artificial economy. It's an artificial economy that is sitting like a leech on top of what we can call the natural economy. Because this economy is based on making money off of money. I remember many years ago, somebody was saying that the hardest to make is your first million. After that, the money starts making money for you. And this is what they created with these instruments. If you have money, you can make more. The money makes more money for you. But this is artificial because it doesn't create anything of value. It just adds numbers to your bank account. Whereas in the natural economy, you are providing a product or a service. And if you look at, go back 500 years, what did we have back then? In Europe, we had these feudal societies. There was a feudal lord who owned a large piece of land. And there were thousands of peasants living on the land. And they were literally the slaves of this feudal lord. They had to work the land. They couldn't move, they couldn't marry without his permission. And all the money that was a result of their labor went to the feudal lord. And you see that they had great privileges. They were much richer than the population. But if you look at the overall economy, it was also at a much lower level. In other words, there was less wealth in a nation, even though the rich people had comparatively more wealth than the population. So what this same power elite, which is many times the same people who are reincarnated over and over again, they have been trying to do this in the democracies with these financial instruments. And it's again this, creating this elitist economy, and you can see it. In America, there's a think tank called the Rand Corporation, and it did studies several years ago about wealth inequality. You can easily find this on the internet. And you can see how over the last 40 years, the wealth inequality in the United States have become much bigger. In other words, money has been funneled upwards from the working population to these rich people. And what they are doing with this is clearly against the natural economy, because what you also see in democratic nations is that after the feudal societies were replaced by democracies that had a freer economy, wealth was increased tremendously. So you see how funneling the money upwards to a power elite will actually, in the long run, decrease wealth overall in society. Why? Because the artificial economy doesn't produce anything of value, more goods, more services. Whereas the natural economy, when people are free to benefit from their own labor, it produces something of value, and therefore there's more wealth in the nation. So there's a natural wealth, and there's the artificial wealth created by the financial instruments. And they are trying to pull more and more wealth from the natural wealth into the artificial wealth. And this is a karma-making situation. These souls are making tremendous karma for themselves. And that's why the Ascended Masters are saying, if you're a spiritual person who is concerned about making maximum spiritual progress in this lifetime, you do not want to tie yourself into this karmic spiral made by these financiers. You absolutely don't. And therefore you have to be very discerning if you have money to invest, how you invest it. And now this person mentions stocks and property. Okay. It used to be, well, it used to be, I don't know exactly when that used to be, but the original idea behind stocks is that a company issues stocks in order to raise capital, to invest in new production. And then people buy the stock because they expect that when the company expands its production, it's going to do better, and therefore they're going to be paid a dividend every year. So in this scenario, people buy stock because they expect to get a dividend. And this is fine, because if the company invests the money from the stock in new production facilities that give new job to people that then get more money to invest in the economy, then this helps grow the economy. This adds to the natural economy by adding products and services. So this kind of stock investment is perfectly legitimate, even today. But what has also happened to the stock market at large is that there is a complete disconnect between the value of a stock and the dividends you can get out of it. So the vast majority of investors are not buying a stock to get the dividends. They're buying a stock because they hope the stock will increase in value so they can sell it and make a profit. But you see, buying a stock at $100 and selling it at $150 doesn't add anything. The company doesn't have any more money to invest in production. It's money that goes into these financial elite. They get the money out of it. So this is artificial wealth that has nothing to do with the natural wealth. The other thing is, of course, that the stock market is not driven by companies raising capital to invest. It's driven by speculation. It's 90% speculation or more speculation. And this is the karmic-making spiral. So if you're tied into this as a spiritual person, yeah, is this really, you really want to tie yourself into this financial elite? Now, the other thing the masters are saying is that this is what they call, St. Germain has called this a gambling economy. You are gambling. It's all perception-based. As long as people think stocks will go up, then stocks go up. But the moment they turn into being afraid that they could lose and everybody wants to sell, you could have a situation where the stock is worth nothing, right? In other words, a stock that is based on speculation. If you have a natural stock where there's a company like Apple Computer making a profit every year, now they're paying dividends. Well, yes, you're getting something out of that stock. And that's worth something. But if a stock is valued 100 times higher than it should be based on the dividends you might get, it has no intrinsic value. It could disappear in a moment. A stock is only worth what people will pay for it. And if there are people who want to buy, then a stock has a value. If nobody wants to buy that stock, it has no value. And this could shift almost instantly based on perception. So it's gambling. You're gambling. that stocks will continue to go up. And yes, they have done for a long time, and people have made a lot of money on it. The question is, do you as a spiritual person want to tie yourself into this? Now we have a property. Okay, the person mentions, if we buy old broken houses, renovate them, and sell them at a higher price, is that making karma? Well, no. You are adding value. You're using your expertise, your physical labor, to improve a house so that it's better to live in. But what you also see in many places, in fact, in most of the rich countries, is that house prices have been going up tremendously over the last 30 years. And this is not driven by an overall rise in the economy. It's driven by speculation and artificially driving house prices up. And this is partly done by these huge, huge mortgage companies who are offering mortgages to anybody with less and less proof of income, and making credit very available, because as more money is available, it drives prices up. They're also, in many cases, actively driving prices up by buying houses. If, you know, I realized a number of years ago, in America, you have these huge hedge funds that are buying stock. And they have gotten so big now, they can drive the stock market. They can look at a stock that's not valued very highly and say, we're going to start buying that stock. And then as soon as some of the big companies start buying a stock, all the middle investors, they say, oh, that stock is going up. Let's buy it. And then everybody starts buying. And then when the stock has gone up to a certain level, when the big companies say, oh yeah, now we've made a huge profit, we doubled our money, then they start selling at a high price. And so they're driving the market up and down. The same thing with property prices. They give out all this cheap credit because if people default on it, it doesn't matter. Then prices go down. Then they can buy while they are cheap. And then when they start buying in a certain area, prices will go up. And I remember a number of years ago in the US, it happened in Miami, Florida. Prices started going up, and then middle investors started buying these apartments, even some that weren't built, because they knew they could have them for a year and then sell them and make a profit. But the thing is, they couldn't pay the mortgage if they had to pay the mortgage long term because they couldn't sell, because the apartments were valued so high. And this is what's happening all over the developed world right now, is that house prices have been artificially bid up to a point where many people, even they're working, they can't afford a house. We have a situation in many countries where for decades a new generation would know that they could be better off financially than their parents. But now we are at a point where many young people are looking at this. I went to school, I got a degree, I have my student loan to pay off, I have a job, but my salary isn't high enough that I can buy a house. And this is ridiculous. But it's also karma making. And therefore I'm saying again, buying a property, buying a house, adding value to it so it's more livable, and selling it even though you're making a profit, that's not karma making. But buying on speculation, that's making karma. It's also incredibly stupid by these power elite. And that's one of the reasons the masters are advising us not to get involved with them, because obviously what's going to happen in the long run to the property markets? What's going to happen? If prices keep going up so nobody with a normal salary can afford to buy a house, what must happen at some point? Well, the bubble will crash. The bubble will burst. I mean, the house market is going to crash. Prices are going to go down. And now you have some people who bought a house at an artificially high price, and they're stuck with a mortgage for the rest of their lives, meaning they are condemned to live the rest of their lives at a very low standard of living in order to pay back these interest rates that are funneled up to the rich people. I mean, how are we allowing this in democratic nations? I'm just asking. How can a democratic nation allow its people to be enslaved by these huge mortgage companies the same way that peasants were enslaved by the medieval feudal lords? How are we allowing a recreation of the medieval feudal society through financial instruments in the democratic world? So again, you're a spiritual person. Do you really want to be tied into this karmic spiral that these top 2% of the population are creating for themselves? Because here's the deal. In a sense, I also talked about something called karma dodging. And this is when the elite, basically the fallen beings, as I explained in my video about how the world was created, they are seeking to make people take on the karma. So in other words, these financially rich people who are creating this artificial economy through stocks, now they have gotten to a point where most working people in America have their pension plans, their 401k, invested in the stock market. Well, that means that the karma is shared now with everybody who is invested in the stock market. And there are many people who they haven't created the karmic spiral, but they have taken on part of that karma for the very rich people. I'm not saying the rich people won't get their share of it. It's not that. But I'm just saying you are tying yourself into it, and therefore you become part of that karmic spiral. And as a spiritual person, do you really want to do that? You know, you have so many of these karmic spirals. I mean, Hitler convinced a large part of the German population that he was right. So they took on part of the karma. By not objecting to a dictator, you will take on part of the karma. The Russian people are not objecting to Putin's war in Ukraine. Therefore, they will take on part of the karma for it. Same thing with the people in North Korea who are not objecting. Same thing with the people who have voted for Trump and believes he can solve all their problems. He's going to create a tremendous karma for himself and for the US in the next 4 years. And the people who voted for him, they're going to bear part of that karma because they enabled him to do this. So that's why I'm saying, I know people are instantly going to be upset when I talk about Putin and Trump, but just look at it from a purely karmic perspective. There is karma being made by leaders. Those who report them take on part of the karma. What karma do you want to take on?